Well, hey everybody. Let's wait for everybody to roll in. I'll share my screen so you can look at something besides our beautiful faces. Can you see that okay, Crystal?
Sure can.
Nice. All right. I welcome the either American PM crowd, the Australia, New Zealand, APAC morning crowd, or some real weird Brits who decided this would be a great time to join in, which maybe.
PM's always a good time somewhere, right?
Mm-hmm. Again, thank you guys, because this is the first one of this session. I'll talk about that in a second as well, but this is the very first tips and tricks. It's something we're trying out. If you've ever seen me on a webinar or ever, I'm not terribly professional, so it's hard for me to keep a straight face and do suit stuff. So this is a good session that we're going to talk kind of casually. Because it's the very first one, I'm going to kind of take the wheel for the first prompt. We put out a poll. You may have answered it, maybe not. Maybe you're along for the ride for this very first one, but just about what MSPs want to talk about. So we're going to kind of start, and so far the format that we're going for is a little bit of that big question, that big theme, and then just random stuff, right? This is not our office hours. Again, I'll probably cut to that in a second, explain it. This is a completely new thing with a different purpose. So more on that in a second. For right now, if you're just joining us, I'm Ricky Cecchini, the VP of Product at CloudRadial, the most verbose webinar person, the worst person to put on here. And then with me is Crystal Wooten, our marketing coordinator who put this webinar together. And hi, you're going to help me answer Q&As, I think is the goal.
I am. Yep. I will let you know if there's any questions. So feel free to put your questions in the Q&A box as you have them.
Yeah. So again, let's get right to what this thing is about and how it works and whatnot. So totally what I just said, interactive session for CloudRadial Mastery, which means that I'm going to be kind of sticking to a big theme, going to specific questions. If you have stuff, it doesn't have to be related to what we're talking about today. Throw them in the Q&A is easier. You can do chat, but if you guys chat and do a bunch of stuff, it sometimes gets buried. Q&A is easy because we can focus on each thing one by one. Truly anything in CloudRadial. We are going to be sticking to CSA, so the actual main portal itself, as well as Portal 365 in the future, or if there's a bunch of questions, I can expand that to any one of CloudRadial products, whether it's chat or whatnot. Because this is the very first sesh and I'm kind of soloing it, I'm just trying to see what kind of questions come up, what you guys want to know about. So I will be bringing more experts in the respective area, so I can bring in the chat stuff from the chat developers, and I can even bring in CloudRadial developers to answer some stuff too. Just having a real casual conversation about how, why stuff works, and so on. So again, if you've seen Office Hours, that's our webinar for product updates, for kind of new feature examinations and or integrations. This isn't really that, even though I can do it. The real purpose of this is you're like, I want to learn what this feature does, or how do I accomplish this task? It's basically just hanging out with somebody who knows about CloudRadial for an hour and seeing if you can get anything valuable, get off a roadblock, or improve the way you use something. So thank you for joining us on the first Tips and Tricks Thursday. Now, that being said, I will say that what about one-on-one questions? Because that happened. We did one in the morning. This is our second session, so technically you guys are the second, but it's the same topic. And one of the things that came up is if there's something that's like specific to your tenant, because obviously on a webinar I can't really, unless you really, really want me to, go blowing your stuff up for everybody. I'll stick to demonstrations in my tenant. Obviously, if I can answer the question, cool. If there's something that just you need specific help on or is affecting your tenant, you have a specific stuff on your content, hit up success@cloudradial.com. If you don't know your account manager, if you do, you can just email them directly and they'll hook you up. So anything else that we don't get to, if I don't answer something properly, let them know there and I'll get back to you. That's the easiest way, I think. Okay, so we did that poll, like I mentioned. And we're going to go through that thing for probably 20 minutes, 30 minutes, hopefully not too bad. And then after that is all QA stuff. We'll go through a casual conversation. If there's time left, we can either cut it early or you guys should ask more questions, whatever. So the top thing in our polls was how to launch your portal, which is cool. Usually when I put out the polls of what kind of topics we want to talk about, we get a bunch of stuff from like kind of more technical. So it's like specifically how do routing tokens work or something like that. But in this case, it's a very broad topic, and it's something that I think most people struggle with because whether they have a plan or not, you could always get improved tips or in like kind of best practices. So part of Tips and Tricks Thursday is I want to bring more data. I'm going to turn off the nuclear white, which is blinding me. But I'm going to kind of go through the things that I've seen, both anecdotally and also data-driven decisions that we've seen partners take that do lead to better adoption rates and launch practices. So I kind of went over this and I formulated this approach in 5 steps. So I'll cover a little bit of these. I'm not doing super heavy PowerPointing. I'll be going off this and going to actual product stuff because I think it's better hands-on. But number one is just a mindset shift, right? And we'll go through each one of these in depth. The mindset shift is trying to understand that your clients are inevitably going from a system of, do I have to do this because this is a pain in my butt, to I don't want to wait, so I'd rather use the IT hub. You notice that I slapped a fancier term for it than portal, because the real concept is, if you are getting the most out of CloudRadial, you're using it for a hub of sorts, right? Tickets are by far, and this is also in this webinar series, I love to give up some SaaS analytics. Ticketing by far is our top used feature, by numbers, by users, by all accounts. However, that is also how we know that other users get into other features. So ticketing is the driver, but it kind of comes to, what else can I do in here? So that hub concept is trying to get more value out of it. So again, shifting that mindset means that you have to understand what that really means, because the first thing that people think about when they say, how do I launch my portal, before that we think about all these tactics to do that, is how do I measure if I'm either currently successful or if I will be successful if I listen to this product guy's advice? And the answer is by numbers of some sort, right? So a lot of times people look at adoption in terms of like, what number do I have to hit? Is it 10% of users? Is that bad, terrible, good, okay? 99? Should I be having 50-50? Well, I'll give you the spoilers of the boring it depends answer, but I'll tell you something better, which is what works. So portal adoption can be lower. Like, we see a lot of the partners that are using it properly, that we think are having the most success with it, actually get adoption of only like 10 to 25%. The reason for that is because what they're really doing is they load in a bunch of users for each company, and in those users, they're not having absolutely everybody log in all the time. That would be terrific, but they're really focusing on kind of your points of contact and the key stakeholders. And in doing so, their adoption numbers look kind of sad, right? 10%, you're like, what? But at the same time, if that 10% is the decision maker, if that 10% gets value out of the reporting, that 10% logs in frequently, right? So it's actually how many users you have, active users, to use software terms. That's what you want. Now, if you want to hit that super high percentage, you could always stick the report or the user count down to just those key figures, and obviously that'll boost your rates. But again, it's kind of up to you on how you've rolled out the portal. The best success that we've seen, both by how many features they use and then honestly how long they've stuck around using CloudRadial because it works for them, are the partners that we see picking that kind of guinea pig approach and going that smaller route and getting that smaller adoption rate. Now, that being said, this is just in the mind. This is just so you set your expectations of what are you going to get when you launch a portal. It's kind of like marketing in a sense, where when you send a marketing campaign, like an email, you don't immediately get demos booked, whatever. There's some time, there's an open rate, there's a click-through rate. Tracking your portal stuff is kind of in the same mindset. Again, the goal with us, though, is not to have an open, have a sale, whatever. It's just having people logging in and interacting ultimately makes them stickier. And again, we'll get them from the I have to use this to this is useful. So number one's the mindset shift. That's pretty easy. If you're already there, then great, skip it. Number two, and this is tangible now, we're going to swap back to CloudRadial stuff, is establishing client value. So when you want to launch the portal, the first thing that you've got to do is kind of put yourself, as our account manager, Mike Chasen says, in the client's shoes and really get in their head when you have that experience. So if you are putting yourself in the shoes of your biggest client and they are logging into your portal, right, whatever company they have, is whatever they actually need being presented prominently? Is it easy for them to get? And this takes a little bit of understanding the client, right? You can totally take the cookie cutter approach and check the box off that everybody has a portal. But if you really want to launch the portal and you want to be super sure that they're going to dig it, it's going to be putting stuff that's common across them, across multiple clients if you can, because that'll help you scale it up in front of them. So a good example, I put up here like password resets, schedule meetings, see invoices, blah, blah, blah. And what that really comes down to is not my Teams chat with Crystal, rather, it's this thing. It's my experience out of the box, right? So when I look at the experience out of the box, I think, all right, if I'm adding value with tickets. That's cool. Maybe I want to refactor this home page to the support home, right? Which a lot of partners do to make sure that's prominent. But then even after that, like what features should I be putting effort into to make sure they have a good experience? Courses is a super popular one, right? So understanding these different features. I'm going to slide this back over here so I can actually read my notes. Woof. Putting these up in front of people and knowing what they're going to get the value out of is the key thing. That'll set you up for content that actually speaks to that. So again, when we start talking about trying to convince people from going to a I have to do this, yikes, to oh cool, that's a place where I do stuff, really comes down to can we get them value? And in addition to all these things, again, I urge most people to start with the tickets because the thing most people get the inherent value down to why this is a good place to start. It's not just a popular feature because it's a cool feature. It's because people inherently expect it from you guys, and it's a good place to link off to other things. So in our service catalog specifically, you can see that this is the reason that we don't just do buy a computer or whatever, right? We have stuff like go onboard, offboard users, go, request some training or go schedule a session because that starts to make this portal link off to other capabilities of you as an MSP. And this is kind of the big part that is missed by a lot of MSPs today, regardless of, client-facing software, not just the portal itself. And one of the examples that I like to give that I gave this morning was the Domino's case study. So all of this thing is, again, just the ramblings of a dude who has some stake in the game if you use the portal, kind of, but also not really, right? If we really take a look at it, one of the biggest analogies that I see all the time, or I talk about all the time, that I think is the most apt is the pizza stuff. So this is actually an article from 2017. This is probably even the stats you'll see in a moment are more advanced than this, but I've found that pizza, Domino's is the closest example to the struggle that MSPs face today. So the gist of this article is, and obviously this is a casual webinar, so feel free to steal my URL or we'll talk about it or whatever. They've had the same issue that MSPs do in that for the longest time, right, you've had people calling in to order pizza, which is fine. It's super easy. It takes no time. You save a number, you're done. But in the pizza experience, it's a pain in the butt, right? Because people can mumble on the phone, mess up, accidentally say the wrong thing, list the wrong topping, give you the wrong address, or you spend time making the pizza. It's the wrong pizza. It's delivered to the wrong address. There's a bunch of costs. So the client's pissed, client being the hungry customer. They're pissed. They didn't get their food. You misdelivered it. You have to make more. Food costs go up. Client unsatisfaction goes up. That sucks. But Domino's obviously figured out, like the rest of the pizza conglomerates, that if you go digital, right, that reduces a lot because you have a digital pizza builder. You can be super sure it's visual. The address is verified. Like there's a bunch of safeguards in this. So it's the same struggle where even though they ultimately have a pizza portal, right, what percentage of their sales come in through that? As of 2017, right, it's been around for a while. Even though this is spun as a positive, more than half of the sales come from digital platforms, which means that Domino's is batting like a 60% probably, which is telling, right? I mean, they've had this problem. They still have this problem where they're getting people kind of gumming up the process. So they don't, even like a giant corporation food, they don't recommend shutting everything down, right? Some people do, some people don't. But for the most part, they say like, hey, do we, recommend you do it one way or the other? You can still pick up the phone and order a pizza, but this is the value that they understood. And the people that embraced it obviously have gotten better service and lower costs for Domino's, which is why they incentivize you for 2-for-1 deals if you order online, so on and so forth, right? So very long-winded tangential way of saying when we go back to establishing client value, it's not just that the portal is the place to do a ticket, right? It's not just a place to go add toppings. It's a place to actually get more than that, right? And in the case of IT, at least we have more to offer than just pizza, right? In this case, we're saying like, hey, you can go there and get the quotes, get the training, get the tickets, get all that stuff. But you have to figure out what matters most to them. If you can figure this out, combined with setting the mindset, right? You've already got a much, much better chance at launching successfully because you know what to expect, you know who's getting what, and you know that when you put that in front of the client, the value's there. You're not guessing that this is something they need. So 2 of 3, I'll go fast, or 2 of 5 rather, and then we can get to the actual your questions. This is obviously huge. So if you've got the needs down, you've got the right mindset, the next one is to set expectations, right? a lot of people that attend these tips and tricks webinars, and I assume in the future, are not going to be people that probably just started. Sometimes, you might have, and that's cool. A lot of people have been trying to use CloudRadial for a bit and trying to figure out how to kind of attack it, right? Where do I come in from and to get this thing launched? And I always say guinea pig, guinea pig, guinea pig, right? You want to pick somebody that you are comfortable with, a client that you're cool with, not your biggest client that you're contentious with, not this deal you could blow. If you're a risky person, you can, but this is where you come in and you say, I want to work with somebody, maybe a couple clients, especially when you're first starting out. And the majority of partners that I've talked to, even in the chat this morning, they've done the best while introducing this during an onboarding, right? The portal. So part of the onboarding of a new client is setting the expectation that this is the preferred way for both parties to interact. But short of that, again, if you've already got clients and you're not onboarding a whole bunch and you want to introduce them to the portal, starting off with a couple of guinea pigs that you know are going to be receptive, they're going to be okay with some frustrations, they're going to be able to raise their hand and tell you that that didn't quite look right or that's not super helpful, will help make the portal rollout to everybody else easier. It can't come from us, unfortunately. I've tried many times because I don't know your clients, right? You know your clients much better than any vendor will. But if you can do the guinea pig and identify specifically the points of contact within that company that will also work with you, so nice guinea pig friendly, nice point of contact friendly, then you've got a good match where you can say, all right, I've got this cool portal. I know that the adoption rate's not going to be 100%. I'm not going to launch it to you tomorrow with some one-off email and hope everybody logs in every day from now on. I also want to make sure that I actually can empower you to do it. So this is something a lot of people I've found don't even know, but CloudRadial has deployment resources that, especially if you've been around for a while and maybe you missed it, maybe you're unsubscribed from stuff, who knows? You might not know that we have deployment resources. So let's click on that and see what that means. And the deployment resources that we have are specifically for either getting buy-in from the portal, helping you use the portal, and also even announcing it, right? So this section here is setting expectation and doing announcements. When we look at that, right, some of these expectations that we can set is like, hey, even something as simple as like, why would you use the portal, right? Now, if you're a bigger company, this might apply, right? Because I know a lot of corporate offices like stuff like this. If you're a smaller company and you're dealing with partners, you have your clients that are sub 10 people, flyer may be overkill. But at the very least, this will give you some stuff to kind of play with and overall help gain adoption. Again, you're not going for the whole world. You're going for your guinea pigs and your point of contacts there. So this also has everything from a specific launch checklist for like, here's all the stuff you want to make sure you do. A demo script. If you want to record your own videos, I record a bunch. Definitely don't have to be professional. I do it on a MacBook Pro camera. That's literally what I'm using right now with no extra mic. I probably don't sound that great, but it's fine. And then even the launch template, right? This is stuff that like between me and you know it, I know it. This thing's AI. You can do AI stuff in 2 seconds. So it's no longer a content problem. Now it's specifically just a how do you want to do it? So I found working with a lot of MSPs that when we get to the expectations, they can pick the right people. When it gets to the announcement part, it's tough, right? Because that's when you start going, well, how much do I give them and how much do I customize and what do I tell them? So this stuff here in the launch resources will at least give you a lot of ammunition to help you potentially launch the portal, right? And obviously it's customizable to your stuff. So super, super easy, I think. And again, this is the same thing I've told the morning crowd. If there's something that you really feel is the absolute blocker and you think like, man, it would be so much easier to launch if we just had this thing, let me know. One of the people this morning talked about I think it was a video. So he's saying, do you have any white labeled videos? And I mentioned that it was hard. We've considered producing videos for you guys, just saying like quick portal tour or something, just to help people feel around. The issue that we have with it is that, it's hard for most MSPs that aren't super tech savvy with video editing software to impose their logo. And aside from that, even if we did do that, the other problem is that it's not really a marketing thing. It's specifically we'd want to do it on the portal, which means that we'd have to make sure that the colors look the same and the sidebar is the same thing. So it's kind of hard for us to do videos, but the closer thing I can do right now is if you're on the support website, support.cloudradial.com, and you head into the CSA and Portal 365, there's actually a section in here specifically on adoption and launch. And one of them, I have a video on how to produce walkthrough videos with recommendation of software and whatnot. It's really not hard. Again, we can always advise and help because a lot of our partners that have done really, really well have put their time and effort into creating these announcement videos. And again, kind of a little bit of a pain, right? Because you have to spend some time making it, but at the very least, you do it once and you can use it for a lot of people. And that really does help improve the adoption rate off the bat. And it makes it feel like it's much more official. So that's another key step. Okay, two more. So we got all that stuff. Crystal's probably like, can I talk? I'm like, no, absolutely not. I brought you
You're
here.
doing great.
Okay, great. Wish I'm out. This is from this morning, but I already drank it all. Oh well. Meeting clients where they are. This is a passive one. Hopefully you don't even have to think about this, but this is something that I do want you to think about because I think you get the edge if you can do this, which is where are your clients? I talk about this a lot, that it does not matter how cool you've made your portal, how useful it is. Everything else we've talked about can be absolutely blown up and negated if you don't do this step. So actually do pay attention. Don't ignore me. Don't listen to me. You want to make sure that you meet them where they are. So the more you take someone out of their day-to-day workflow, the less likely they are to do it, right? So any piece of software is kind of hard to get into if it's not in front of your face all the time. So what that means is you do have a portal, right? It can be deployed in a couple different ways. If you're doing a web portal, other than just saying, hey, we have portal.mycompany.com, make shortcut links on their desktops, right? Do something that actually puts it in front of them, whether that's an actual email campaign or something clever technically. That stuff is important, right? Try to work with them where they are. More popular, I shouldn't have put this as second, I should have put this as first. Our own analytics show that the partners that tend to stick with us the longest, that have the highest client adoption rates, that have the highest feature usage rates, are the ones that deploy through Teams. It's not because there's some magic advantage to Teams as far as you get a technical benefit here, there, or the other. I wish there were. But the answer is simply people are in Teams, especially when they're Microsoft shops, and having the portal be a button click away, auto-authenticated, all this stuff is a better way to get people in there. So again, meeting them where they are, critical to make sure that they actually do it. So I even for some reason spelled it like a Russian philosopher, but SSO login is a critical component of, and I still stick to that. I think SSO is a very critical component of. So SSOing into stuff is also how we get people to come back to the portal because it's easier, right? So the behavior also from a user association is that going to the portal is the easier way to do stuff. Again, I get to versus I have to is what we're going for by the end of this. And this is something that Safi Ferris, our CloudRadial co-owner and CRO, said this morning, which is continually selling and selling that clear value is something else that you have to do. So what she was talking about in the morning and what we'll talk about now as well is that it's unfortunately not a one and done thing, which I know is kind of a pain. It's kind of like you have to kind of keep reinforcing it in a way that makes sense, in a way that helps your clients understand that there is value in the portal. Again, one-off email, one time might get a poke, but it's not going to get actual adoption unless your people are raring to go, right? And remember, the guinea pigs are probably going to be more likely to put up with that stuff and actually go along with it. So that brings me to the last final point, which is enforce what you say. Now, who knows how to adopt any software? It's hard, right? So we're going to look at a couple different tactics inside of CloudRadial that you can actually do, but software adoption is hard, like I said before, because if it's not in front of your face and no one's asking you about it, and no one kind of continually prods it, you don't use it. And it's not really a need issue because obviously a lot of people identify needs for a lot of software. But if you don't have it in your way and it's kind of difficult to get to, and there's a lack of reminders to use it, especially like reporting, which is not something you desperately need to do every single moment of every single day, it's tough, right? So what we recommend in here, and I'll show you in CloudRadial, is stuff like ticket links. There's not this super crazy effort. I'm not telling you to drop what you're doing and start marketing your portal to absolutely everybody all the time and send 3 emails a day. I'm saying like do passive stuff like put ticket links in emails, um, reinforce the phone calls. So really what that I was trying to say, even though I'm writing scribble notes, like I said, Tech Tip Thursdays is my first one. I don't know what I'm doing. Reinforcing phone calls means forgetting the option to even allow them. Now, that's a risky move, and we talked about it this morning. Our partner that has the highest adoption, I think, is batting a 96%, which is insanity. Amazing, but insanity. The reason they're doing that is because they reinforce the fact that they no longer do phone. They no longer do emails. So they want everybody submitting to the portal. Now, Domino's says don't do that, right? Domino's still takes phone calls because they realize that not every customer is going to be cool with that. Maybe you can with some more tech savvy ones, but not everyone's all right with that. That being said, reinforcing the fact that coming back to the portal is the place to do stuff is the key, right? So again, even if you're not actively sending the email, how can you remind them? Well, I mentioned ticket links. Let's go down to partner and settings at the bottom down here. And the ticket links, for example, I'm using ConnectWise, help you to get a link back in front of your customers. And what this does is typically you put this in front of your or inside of your PSA reply emails so the customer can, whether they submit a ticket from an email, let's say to begin with, and then you send the reply, automatic reply, it's going to have the link here, and then this variable number will take them back to the portal, even if the ticket was not submitted from within the portal. Or if it was submitted through the portal and they're getting updates because, PSA automated emails, it'll remind them, hey, this is where you go. And it'll keep reinforcing them back in the portal, right? So we always focus on tickets for this kind of stuff because this is the easiest way for people to understand, like, yes, this is the place to go. And then they see a bunch of other options and they go further. So communication is super important. There's a couple of features that you can look into inside of CloudRadial itself, but those are really good for when they're actually in the portal. So communication and reward systems are something that I think partners kind of don't really get enough of because again, they're trying to battle with how do I put this portal in front of the most people? How do I get the most feature value out of it? And I say, you will promise you will get the most value out of it if you just stick to the fundamentals and make sure that as people gain adoptions in those areas, uh, they kind of bleed into the other ones organically. At least that's what our own numbers see. So, that being said, those are my 5 things that I think are super, super helpful for getting people to use the portal. Once again, the top 5 things are shift that mindset, get that client value, meaning make sure that their experience right off the bat is extremely valuable and pertinent to what they need. Expectations, right? You know what the actual usage rates are going to be. You're going to want to make sure the announcements are set. You want to make sure those launch resources are pushed forward so you have a nice organic onboarding process. Meeting them where they are means that you don't stop the process of just saying we have a portal and hoping they go there. You are actively making it easier to access, and enforcing means whether you do it as dramatically as cutting off a medium, right? Cool if you can do it, as passively as just at least inserting a link automatically so they have a place to go back to, or the in-between thing between all those things is you can have meetings, right? So another thing that part of that email said in the launch resources was like, hey, 15-minute onboarding, whatever, mentioning it during QBRs. There's not really a hard set of rules because a lot of MSPs do things differently is the way they communicate in general, but whatever your typical regular communication channel is the best way to do it. And again, focusing on those point of contacts ensures that if they get the buy-in, that's awesome. They will likely be able to get buy-in and push from other people if you need other people to be using the portal instead of you having to wrangle a bunch of people inside of a company. So these are the most successful things, and hopefully that will help you launch your portal successfully. If you need more help with this stuff or you want clarification or there's anything else that we can kind of answer, obviously happy to. That's a success at cloudradio.com. And then your account manager can either hook you up with some resources or at the very least circle you back to me, and then we can figure out where to go from there. Whether you need some help with video advice or whatnot, I'm happy to do it. Okay. Wow. Look at that. That's so much talking. I'm going to swap over to a regular old tenant. Crystal, do we have any Q&As? I think we do. I think we have. I see a
We
wall.
have a couple. Yeah, we did. I think you may have touched though, answered the first one just all on your own. The first one was they like tips to encourage more usage and visits to the portal. So I think you covered that clearly. John, if you still have questions, toss them in there and we'll get them answered. The other one that came in, do you have any tips or tricks for getting a formatted checklist into auto tasks from CloudRadial? So the use case here is try that again, looking to use all the auto task checklist functionality, like having technicians being required to complete certain items in the checklist brought in from CloudRadial.
I want
I
to
think
say
that's a pretty solid question.
Good question. That's exactly what this stuff's for. I dig that very much. So when you look at, I'll have to check on how this actually works. So who asked that question? Just so I can use names.
Matthew Adkins.
Oh, hey, cool. What's up, dude? Yeah, we can, I think, use the checklist function in here. Now, I don't know off the top of my head. He may have used it. That's why I'm asking. It's like, So either this is a case of this is here and you're asking for it to be formatted better, or you don't know it's here. But in either case, it's like you've got the question set here. In ConnectWise, it does do that. It comes in as their like tasks and their line items. I don't know if Autotask does it, but it should. Let me go to another test tenant of mine. See if we even have the field available. It does have the checklist one, which is nice. You can also see my disgusting test things in the background. Yeah, we can give that a shot in real time if you want. But let me know real quick in the comments or chat or whatever if you knew about that and if you've tested that before. Otherwise, I can bring it up to our own dev team. Okay, so while that bakes, the other thing I'll go over. So in this case, this is another tech tip thing. If the conversation lulls, right, rather than just being like, cool, I'm cutting it off, I'll try to go over at least one other, if I can, bonus question, right? So there's that poll introduced a lot of different stuff and it's kind of all over the place. So I know it's kind of difficult to follow if you're just hanging on for the ride. This is one of the big questions. The other second top one, I'm not sure why it was, but I'm kind of interested, was how to use the sales matrix. So kind of talk a little bit about that in a moment if unless anyone else has anything else they want me to go into at this time.
Yeah, there's another question that just came in. So Matt, you have a few questions here. So the first one, Matt's asking if you have any guidance on managing projects through CloudRadial, or is it only done through the PSA and CloudRadial is mostly for the client to check updates?
Yeah, that's a solid question. Now, this is going to be dependent on your PSA, but for I want to say I should probably know this for definitely for ConnectWise and Autotask and BMS. I'm not sure where the state of the other ones are. What should be happening is, yeah, you have under account and projects, right? It has the blade. Now, what he's talking about is these are being pulled in directly from the PSA. So this is a read-only thing back to us. You're not really able to do anything, and this is totally for the client. So to answer, put this to bed right off the bat is, yeah, this is designed as a view only thing right now. I know there's some different capabilities. I think ConnectWise and Autotask have the most in the sense that like view the projects, get a high level gist of what's going on with it, and then also see the tickets associated to it because they're a different type of thing. So in that mindset, right? If this is a read only thing and you don't have, let's say you have one of the PSAs that's not supported, can you do any project management? Again, CloudRadial, I would be the last person to call this a project management tool properly because it really doesn't have half the functions you'd need to do even basic stuff. But if you are truly looking for a cursory board, that's where I would recommend the account planner, right? Because at the end of the day, this thing you can build up with your own planner cards. You can look with your pre-built ones, right, that come with your portal, or you can always ask us, we can get you a sample set. And then if you have one of those PSA connected or PSAs that work with CloudRadial, you've connected your PSA, it can actually pull in quotes and projects and stuff. So is this a project management board? It's like, no, because you're not gonna be able to do cool stuff like setting to-dos and whatnot. But if you need a basic thing for them to say, hey, I know the actual projects we're doing, right? These are the ones with tasks and tickets and blah, blah, blah. And then this is more for like project management in the sense of like you have your high level deliverables and whatnot. And again, the partners that we see kind of getting the best success are using both. Again, I wouldn't put all your effort into doing this as your project management thing because this thing isn't syncing back. It's not creating a bunch of stuff. This is truly meant for a simple client-friendly thing where they go, what are your core services? And then here is how are those projects going, the real deal stuff, right? So mix of those two, I think will probably do the trick.
Okay. So we have a few more. But first off, we're gonna circle back to Matthew's question.
Yes.
I don't think you can see these, but so if I'm just reading them to you, forgive me. However, he says, I have many checklists being added into Autotask via CR forms. He would like CloudRadial to submit checklist items that can be marked as important into Autotask. This makes a tech click a separate button to confirm they did this before closing the ticket. Also being able to indent items. He's guessing this might be a feature request.
Got you. Yeah, it might. I mean, again, the specifics to how CloudRadial would be able to affect like an actual interactive form like that, not super sure, but I can get with you after and see the deets. Because if it's something that, like, again, my cop-out answer, but not really, it's the truth, is if that stuff's pullable through the API, we can configure that through. Chances are what that'll end up looking like is just taking something like this, and instead of having the checklist look like that, it'll probably just mirror the same UI or like some touched up version that Autotask would have. But I'll have to see where that is, if that's been requested before or whatnot, but I'll look into it for you.
All right. So you have another couple, you have quite a few questions. You guys are a great
Great.
participating
Wonderful.
audience
It's
tonight.
like Use whatever.
Um,
Talk
all
about
right. So how
sure.
do you enable the quote and project options in the planner?
So if you have a supported PSA, right, what you're going to want to do is you go into a specific planner under account planner. And I say specific because I mean the individual client. And the reason we did it that way is because sometimes you say, oopsie daisy, I don't want them seeing that. And sometimes you do, right? So it's like, you, I say the same thing, whatever. Sometimes you don't, sometimes you do. So if you want to activate it and you're not seeing these toggles, just hit settings. Settings up top here, we'll have a little simple thing right here. This is a partner level element. And the reason we hid it and we added those toggles is because those toggles are actually client facing as well. So you have the option to show the toggles. And then when you're on there, right, depending on what you've got, if you've got a whole bunch of quotes and you got a whole bunch of projects, it can bog up the board. So we give you the option to allow them to be flipped on and off. Again, that's if you have a supported PSA, which again, I'm pretty sure is ConnectWise, Autotask, and then BMS. And then if you want to define some stuff, if you're not getting the right stuff showing through, under partner and settings and PSA at the top right under setup, there's a section for the respective ones for project settings. So you can do some filters on that. And I bring this up because this is how those planner cards are being filtered. So whatever you set up here is going to end up reflecting back on the planner cards in the PSA settings.
Okay, moving on. So we have, like I said, quite a few more. So, all right. John is looking to implement a risk register so clients are aware of the current risks on their network. Like Windows 12 server running, I'm gonna mess this all up. So not as technical as Ricky here. So, anywho, we are thinking about using a special service board in ConnectWise and then creating reports that go out to the clients. He says below are the current risks, but I don't see anything below that. So do you have any thoughts on that?
Let me get in that chat and see that too.
Yeah, go ahead, and it's in the chat. So I don't know if you can see that or not.
Sure.
Hopefully I didn't completely butcher that question. If I did, sorry, John.
I was like, it's so bad. I gotta pop open the questions and look myself.
I have a few others that are on there, so let me know when you're
You can keep
make sure
asking.
everybody gets their question answered.
Sure. Special service board ConnectWise, totally doable. Create boards that go there out to the client. Oh, I assume this is like the project stuff, right? I mean, this is part of the project discussion.
Could be.
Right, because either whether you did it in the boards for a project or you just did it in a specific board within the tickets, either way, that's a good approach because obviously you can set the board view inside of the tickets in either section and make sure they actually see them out. So I would do that, and then again, as far as the reports goes, obviously like that's a good idea too. If you're doing reports and you want those to go to clients, make sure you look into your report archives. You probably know about those too if you're mentioning that, but I did this as well, right? You can set these guys up globally. This is more for anybody else who doesn't know what I'm talking about. Report archives are just literally areas you can create to sustain and retain reports as much as you want from any source you want pretty easily. So if you go to partner clients and go to report archives up here, you can create these globally, right? It'll create a literal folder in every single company. So I'll just do settings up here, add a quick folder. So again, in John's case, right, if you're doing like your your risk reports, you can mess around with the settings like retention days and routing settings and alerts and whatnot, but super simple. You just make a folder, that's it. Then what this thing is going to do is it's going to create folders for every client called risk reports. When I refresh, you'll see it. And then those clients in one click are going to have the individual email address. A lot of partners like to email stuff in there. If it's super, super sensitive, what you can do is you can go to, what is it, developers.cloudradial.com. And then you can go down to the slash reference and you can play with our API to put stuff inside of the report archives, which is, again, if you have something hypersensitive, always a nice play. But you don't have to do that again. Most people just prefer to get the reports, set it and forget it. So between the board you're doing and between sending the reports in there this way, should be a good mix.
The API is only if you want to get really technical, right?
The API stuff is something that I myself am not a developer. So when people are like API stuff, I'm like, yeah, get, post.
All right. Okay, so Blair is asking if you have any tips for working through setting up automation of user creation slash license assignment in 365 via the CloudRadial forms that get filled in.
That's one of those questions where I go like, damn it, kind of. I'll talk about what I know, but it's going to be somewhat limited. And this is good. That's good feedback. So again, if you want to go into a lot of those types of questions, um, I'll start bringing in more. Like that happened this morning as well. Somebody asked about a PowerShell question that was obviously relevant to us, and I was like, you know what, I might start bringing my tech boys in here. But irrespective of that, I'll answer what I can. So new user creation is a super popular thing that obviously people drive the adoption of the portal around a lot because it's easy, people understand it, it's very useful. So to answer the question of can we kick it off, there's a couple of different ways to do it. I'll go over them very lightly. There's a long answer here, but I want to make sure that we cover the possibilities. We say how we can do it. So option one is just to brute force it, meaning if you're really good and you have the patience and you know how things work with sending stuff to like Azure Functions and whatnot, what people do commonly is they go build a form. They do it usually inside of partner content, right? So it's a global form, but for the sake of simply explaining this, I'll just make one right here. And then when they create these individual questions, right, a lot of these questions either will trigger a command or not trigger a command, but they send data to said area in ADO or whatever. So when we have these individual questions, like this is just a simple subject text field. I clicked a button at the bottom saying show more options. You can see it here that is going to expand it. And then you can either store these values from this question as the client answers it in a custom field in the PSA and do some automations off of that if you were so inclined. More commonly, people do it with the scripting in the JSON field ID. So the idea is that we pass whatever value they enter in here, whether it's a multi-select, right? They pick a value, they enter a value, and then you want to send that over to do the automation. You enter in those additional areas, and then under the routing options, you would send that off to your Flow or JSON webhook, whatever you want to use, right? So you can have a lot of options here. Now, again, while it works, it's kind of, you have to fix a lot of stuff together. So this is like handing you a bunch of screws and going, you could probably build a house, I think. Pretty good. So that's option one if you really need a bunch of custom stuff. A little bit more help is if you go to automations, right? If you have CloudRadial CSA, you could do an automation, which that comes down to being able to chain stuff together. The reason I would recommend an automation if you're doing something a little bit more seriously is probably because the webhooking function inside an automation is more advanced, right? You can actually be more clever with it and be a little bit more secure. So this is a better ultimate way to do it. And this should help you achieve that process of actually sending stuff through because again, once you run an automation to fire off data from the question that the client is filling out to the automation engine, whether that's your own stuff or like Rooster Pia or whatever, it's really clean. It's all done in one area, and you can invoke tokens from the questions. So that's a whole, like I said, whole discussion. We can go into that specifically. And this is one that if you're saying like, I get what he's saying, I need more details, or this is completely foreign language to me, can vary, right? So if you this is more in the camp that you want to know more, hit up your success account manager, and then we can talk about this more so I don't monopolize everybody's time. The third way, which is a hack because obviously it just came out, is just use an automation engine that actually does that stuff. So we literally are in the I want to say the third week, maybe the second and a half week of testing Pia. So we just did a Pia integration, which works pretty sweet. And the context there is that by having Pia integrated, and obviously if you know anything about their RPA forms, then they're handling all that stuff here. So the idea, this is going to fail because I'm a fake admin, but when I click on this, I can load the Pia form directly in there, and that will just take their smart form that has all those powerful automations hooked up already and kick them off. So any one of those three ways is a valid way for the specific details of that stuff. Again, if you need the hyper specifics, we can go into it with success at. But those are the three most common ways. Obviously, the PS stuff is not really a counter, but I would say playing around with your advanced webhook inside of automations is probably the best, most efficient way.
All right. Good answer, Ricky.
Long answer.
What is the status with further developing on the integrations with the other PSAs? Halo PSA is missing a lot of the functionality that other PSAs have in CloudRadial, like quotes and agreements, etc.
Yeah, as far as I've identified, because we talked about that like a couple days ago, when people want feature parity with Halo, they're looking for three things. It turns out feature parity is not as deep as we thought. It's quotes, invoices, and I want to say approvals is about the only thing. And I don't know. This this is kind of one of the problems I had with Tech Tip Thursdays in general, which is like if I start getting into feature requests and or dev timeline stuff, it's going to turn into office hours, which I don't really want to do. So for the sake of this webinar, I'll say cop out because I don't want to take it into the feature request area and start pulling up my dev boards and start looking over a bunch of stuff. It's for how-tos specifically for now. If Safi changes her mind and lets me talk about that stuff, then I'll happily do it. But right now I have a boss lady who's like, don't do it. So forgive me.
So maybe more to come later.
I think so. I'll make a bid for it, to be fair to you. I think that a lot of that stuff where we're talking about the feature stuff is no problem, especially as we're talking about feature parity. We're making sure like I can't really talk about one feature and go like, but this doesn't apply to so. So to be fair to you, I totally get wanting to understand where that stuff's at too. I'll make a bid for it.
I think that's all we can ask.
Yeah.
I don't see any more questions coming in, but if there's something that Ricky did not touch on, or do you guys have more questions on, please feel free to toss them in the chat or the Q&A box. But that's all that I have on my side.
Then I'll do one last little bit, and then if you guys want to stick around for that, cool. If not, sayonara. But I appreciate you either way. And the thing I'll cover because it was the second most requested, very interesting. The way we did the poll was I threw a bunch of topics up that I know I've gotten questions in the past, and I said, not pick the top one. I've done that before. I just said pick ones you want to talk about, and for some reason, I got a lot of like QBRs, and number one by a long shot was how do I launch the portal, and then for some reason, like two votes behind the other one, how to launch the portal was sales matrix. So we'll talk about that for a brief moment. Very least, if you've never seen it, you'll know what it is. So people ask us a lot about QBRs, right? When we look at CloudRadial, a lot of times people are generally coming at it from two things: showing the client stuff and or wanting to improve some kind of efficiency, typically through ticketing, typically like, trying to get structured data. If you're of the first camp, right? You're going more for QBR stuff, then what you end up running into is going like, okay, so maybe you have a dedicated QBR tool, maybe you're using CloudRadial for QBRs, maybe it's a hybrid, whatever. But ultimately, one of the questions that people have is, whatever way I'm selling to my clients, can I understand who has what? Right? And going like, how does that work? Can I see if client A has product A and client B has product A and so on and so forth, right? So I'm going to switch tenant to one that has more data than mine, my personal test one for this webinar, and I'll divert back to that planner. So the planner can be used in a bunch of different ways. This is what makes it probably a little bit difficult and also a little bit simple. So it's up to you on which direction you swing because it kind of is what you want. But a super popular thing for people to do is to go like, okay, am I going to load in every small objective and make this super rich data that people live off of? Hey, some people dedicate their time, and if you have the team, like you have account managers, and they want to have ownership over their planner board and whatnot, awesome. If you're either a smaller company and or you just don't have time, you don't have the resources, then but you still like the idea of this, stick to super high level stuff, core services that you offer. It could be as high level as like managed services, general, backup, security, VoIP, like whatever type of categorization you want. When you have all that stuff and you can actually push it out and you stage their board, and I'm not going to make this a planner demo because it's just move stuff around, right? This is how you can scale this up, right? Because you're working in the same framework, people go to the same portal, all that stuff. So if you can get into that mindset where everything is kind of locked and loaded into one place, what ends up happening is you can run a report through all of the planner cards. So if you go to not the account planner, but you go down to the partner planner, right? It's a separate area. Right now we're in the account planner, which is the planner specific to that customer. Partner planner is going to be the global one, and that's broken up in a couple different ways. Now you can see all the plan cards at once, but really we're talking about this thing. People ask us about the sales matrix. The sales matrix is a way to take those planner cards, whether you have hyper specifics or super top level ones, lay them across all clients and basically give you that one shot view saying, hey, we've done this, we've not done this, we've sold this, whatever. At worst, right? This is the least useful it is. It gives you some visibility on who has what. That is the least useful thing it does, and that's still pretty useful. The best usage of this for partners that I've seen that actually, they hybridize this to be fair. They've used this in conjunction with other stuff, is they've done this to do things as advanced as testing services, right? So when I say that, like, hey, we have this potential service, or like, again, if you're in the higher echelon and you start doing like account management and really understanding what sells and what doesn't, you would be able to look at something like this, like managed IT services, and go, hey, this is pretty good, right? We know that across the column, it's something that a lot of people have, so this must be a pretty good service. Now you look at something else that we have, like conference room upgrades, maybe it's too niche, maybe it's not really well done, maybe it's not really landing. So when it starts to get more interesting is using the sales matrix, not just to figure out who's got what, but figuring out strategy of what's an effective service and what is not. Then, if you look at it across the rows, it can get even more interesting because you start to understand whether your clients are risky or not, right? Are they a client that typically takes good advice and they listen to us and they have a bunch of stuff? Evans Bakery looks pretty good to me, right? They've taken a lot of services from us, probably a low risk client, probably one we either spend a bunch of time with or don't need to spend a bunch of time with because they're pretty bought in. You look at something like CloudRadial Info and they've got absolutely nothing. So you either think, oof, I'm just onboarding them. I haven't really had a chance, but this could be an at-risker, right? So the sales matrix is, again, deceptively simple because you look at this and you go, yeah, it tells me who's got what. But if you're using the account planner, to any degree, the sales matrix is almost a must to complete the value for you because again, this is cool for them, but really it's something that you want to take back to yourself and say, okay, I know who's using what. So not super crazy. Again, it's not something that you're going to take years to master. It's just if you use the planner, make sure you're aware of the sales matrix because you can have pretty good strategic discussions over it. All there is to it. I'm not going to go into a super long rant because I'm pretty sure my YouTube video on this is probably the same content, probably the same length. I don't know. I never have too much to say. There it is for people who requested how to launch a portal and then also how does button work. This is how button works, which is I'll answer that question all day.
Now, that's a pretty fancy feature, the sales matrix, though. Page back when you had the cards, a question came in. Can you archive those cards instead of deleting them?
You can. So if you right click on any one of these cards, so let's say we're doing, I don't know, implement email archiving solution, right click it and see this little move to options. Now, I'm going to be straight with you. This is product guy to you. I'm going to go direct to the camera here. I don't know why there's a right click button. This isn't anywhere else in CloudRadial. You're not missing this. This is a brand new, it's been this way since I started and I've been here like the longest. I don't know why there's a right click here. You can't right click on anything else, whatever. You click move to options, that thing is going to poof disappear and that's going to move over to options. So options gets a status of you can actually do the same thing with the completed stuff and it'll kind of stick it back here and retain the completed. And then if it's something that you have moved over, so again, in this case, I did that implement email archiving so thing, it'll just change it to like a proposed. We come on like, hey, it's out of the way. It's not necessarily declined, it's just out of the way so you can bring it back. And if you do want to bring it back, once again, let's see, I think you just click on these little dots and go move to list. But that's it. That's the equivalent of archiving, just getting it out of the way.
Can you do it for all clients or only for individual clients?
If you wanted to quote unquote archive something, probably more than likely what you're really talking about is you have a set of planner cards. Let's say you have 10 things and maybe only three of those are like, I'll give a tangible example because I know exactly what you're after, I think. Um, you have like, again, this is a US thing, but feel free to replace with your region's compliance stuff. We do like HIPAA assessment as like one of the cards that you can do is like, oh, we want to do a HIPAA assessment. I think it's even in my stock set of my test one. Let's see if it is or isn't. Maybe not. Whatever. No big deal. Imagine one of these is a very specific one. I don't need HIPAA for all these people because people don't comply with US healthcare law. Maybe this is a British client, right? They don't care what HIPAA is. So you could go into every single one of your clients, right click and move to options, and that's fine if you like clicking. But if you want to save yourself some time and you want to be a little bit smarter, when you go into your content area and you're talking about the macro level, right? These are where the planner cards originate, the core set, right? Whatever you decide. I'll minimize all these and go down to planner cards, planner items. The easier way that I found to do it is to add a new planner content package. So we're going to just literally call it like this. So let's say I'm doing like, I don't know, conference havers, conference room havers. The reason I would do this is now I've got a separate folder that can house different cards. I've got the conference room havers and the sample product catalog. When I go into my product catalog, it's easier for me to take the stuff that is irrelevant to most clients. Like, again, I'll take that conference room upgrade, click on this, save as, And then what I'll do is I'll shift this over to conference room havers. And then I can just delete it out of here. So now what I've done is I've basically taken the exact same card, shifted it over, deleted it out of here. Sweet. Then I have this different package. So I have the majority of stuff going from one client. I've got a different package going to potentially a different set. And then this is why content was designed the way it was. When I'm in my conference room haver package with that one planner card in there, I'm going to change the audience. So if you've done a good job, or at least, you want to go back and think about how you structure your client thing, I don't have to publish it to everyone. Maybe I want to make a group of conference room havers and shift it over to them. The end result of that I think is kind of what you're after ultimately, right? So this is a longer step. Obviously, it's a lot slower than going right click move to options, but the end result is that if they match the all group, right? You match everything, everybody gets the same stuff. And if they match the conference room haver, it'll all appear in one place, no problem. If you're like, hey, there's no point serving up conference room planner cards to companies that work remotely because they don't have a conference room and never will, they're never even going to see it. So it will ultimately save you from having to make that a checklist item when you onboard a client, right? To right click on their planner card and go click on move to options and all the irrelevant stuff. Though that is a valid thing. I've seen people do that too. So long-winded, but I think you probably see what I'm at. That's a long product way to say, yeah, you have to click on every one by one. So
Yeah, that was a long way to say that, but you answered the question as usual. So, thank you for asking, Richard. Okay, so question now, I don't know if this may be one that you want to answer or not, because I don't know if this is a feature request, but do you
okay.
have, or are you going to develop specific guides on setting up automations with webhooks, etc.?
I don't know if we have any actually, now you say that. We've thought about doing it, and the reason we thought about it and not actually done it is because we are not like I mean like we have people that do webhook automations like internally. It's like obviously they're tech savvy and whatnot, but we run into the issue that if we start helping people do that, A, we're not super good at it, so we don't want to give you crappy stuff. And then B, we get stuck in a loop where people ask us for more and more stuff outside of CloudRadial. So I wouldn't be surprised if we don't have anything. And then also I don't know. So I'll say tentatively no, probably because of those two reasons. I think the best one, believe it or not, sometimes companies they have like, oh, our developer's the best one. We actually have a support guy named Tevin Watkins. If you're ever put in a support ticket and get escalated, you'll likely go through him. He's our whiz kid with any kind of automation. So if you have a specific use case and you want the cheeky product guy's advice, probably put in a ticket and see if you could just be like, can anyone help me figure this out? And if you land on Tevin, you're in good shape. That's a little advice from me.
If not, ask for Tevin.
I didn't say that.
Shh, I'm just kidding.
I was gonna be really pissed when he gets 14 requests tomorrow. Can you help me do this? And he's gonna be like, damn it, who let it out that I know?
Yeah, you'll thank us for that later. That seems like all of it over here.
Awesome. And good timing. So I really want to say thank you. I really appreciate you guys for joining for our literally first Tech Tip Thursdays. Be putting out a poll in a little bit and stuff just to say how was it? What can I improve as far as like process? Obviously, like some bug stuff, some feature request stuff, maybe more technical. I could start bringing in PowerShell people to do live advice, but uh, appreciate it. And I'll catch you guys for the next one. Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys.
Thank you, Crystal. Bye.